Morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tech Talk from Digital Jersey. This episode is a particular fascination of mine, and it's automation in the workplace. We hear a lot about AI, machine learning, and RPA, and the differences are subtle but very, very important. And rather than hear me talk about it, we're going to hear from the experts, from Phil Cuming from Comnexa and Martin Keelagher from Agile Automations, and they're really going to explain to you how automation is going to affect the workplace. I mean, usually right now, and we'll see in a minute, I'm not going to use this backdrop, but AI is already affecting the way in which we work, from these kind of background automations and noise cancellations. It's becoming subtly different, but really important to understand. So let's hear from the experts. Phil, it's over to you.
Hello. For those who don't know me, I'm Phil Cuming and I'm co-founder and commercial director at Comnexa. Comnexa is a Salesforce consulting partner. This means we implement, optimize and maintain industry-leading Salesforce solutions to help our clients connect with their customers, make data-backed strategies, and ultimately find, win and keep more business. Today, I'm going to be discussing the evolving sales process and the behaviors that we have seen in recent times to make sales processes more efficient. This is extremely relevant right now because businesses around the world, including here in Jersey, are needing to adapt and look at ways that they can remain efficient and collaborative whilst their workforce is remote. For those of you who haven't heard of Salesforce, they're the global market leaders in the CRM space and were first, way back in 1999, to take CRM and sales automation to the cloud, meaning companies could access all of their customer information on a website from any device, anywhere in the world, 24/7, instead of needing to house giant servers. Back in 1999, Salesforce wanted to make CRM as easy to use as it was to buy a book on Amazon. Fast forward to the present day, and the ambition is about providing users with a 360-degree view of their customers in order to make selling a data-backed and connected experience. Our team reads a lot of Salesforce research, as well as following the latest trends in sales and marketing and making those processes as efficient and data-led as possible. I wanted to touch upon a key finding that appeared in Salesforce's State of the Connected Customer report, which was published in early 2020 before the pandemic went truly global. This report surveyed 7,000 business buyers globally in order to determine the factors influencing customer expectations, the emerging technologies that are influencing the future of customer experience, and why brand trust is increasingly important and how companies can foster it. One of the key findings that they determined was that 70% of customers say connected processes such as seamless handoffs or contextualized engagement based on earlier interactions are very important to winning their business. Now, this might sound obvious, but yet many businesses struggle with this, and they struggled with it when their teams were working closely together from the same offices and interacting in person. So today, I'm going to discuss and showcase some of the automations and AI functions that we've been working with in recent times to improve sales processes and create connected sales experiences, even when our teams are working independently. Over the last 300 years, our world has seen incredible innovation and unprecedented technological change. Today, according to the World Economic Forum, we're firmly in the fourth industrial revolution, which is where artificial intelligence, robotics, and the Internet of Things are transforming the customer experience. Artificial intelligence is making devices and apps smarter and almost nearly human. The lines between physical and digital worlds are blurring, with the likes of Revolut and Monzo now starting to challenge traditional banks. And we're seeing law firms using AI bots to scan case notes in place of paralegals. Looking at the world around us, we've seen technology shift from mainframes to client server and into the cloud, where everything is connected. From friends on social networks to mobile phones and even products in our houses. It's this connectivity and intelligence that allows us to provide a connected experience and then automate as much as possible to help us be efficient. So as we think about the future of work, I want to look at this concept of pandemic acceleration, because the pandemic has accelerated the digitalization of the whole economy. Events such as this and much bigger expos are being broadcast over the likes of Zoom and Teams instead of being in conference centers. Teams are communicating over Slack and live chat tech. Times of crisis is where innovation truly happens. And innovation has helped us move from the web to social mobile to this idea of success from anywhere. The 4 million B2B sellers around the world have stopped getting on planes, being in conference rooms and taking their clients out for dinner, and they have done business over video chat. Salesforce has surveyed sales reps over recent months, and over half say that they have no intentions of flying to do business anymore. This is perhaps something that we would struggle with in Jersey, but it's an indication of where the market is at. Digital selling is here to stay. Businesses who have managed to keep selling successfully via digital channels will also likely see their entertainment and travel budgets cut as CFOs realise that there's no longer a necessity for hitting targets. Salesforce has tried to reimagine the sales process for a post-pandemic world and building in functions such as video meetings to the CRM, something that I'll show you in my demo in just a moment. So in this demo, I'm going to show you some of the features of Sales Cloud, which is Salesforce's sales CRM product. These features are designed to enable smart, efficient, and collaborative selling using automations and AI built into our CRM. The business featured in this demo is called Honeywell, and they are a Salesforce customer. And, like almost all of us, this sales rep is now trying to do his job whilst working from home. Our sales rep can start their day in high-velocity sales. Salesforce Einstein and productivity tools make selling very simple. Einstein identifies leads for Honeywell and prioritises them in our sales rep's work queue so that they know where to start their day. The scoring is automated based upon criteria that we've already defined, such as customer history, visits to our website, and email opens, and of course upon urgency. Our rep can then power through contacting their sales leads by taking advantage of email templates with built-in personalization, and sales opportunities are automatically moved to the next stage in our sales workflows or pipelines. Once these first tasks are completed, our rep can look at their calendar and move on to the next part of their day, their scheduled meetings. Salesforce Meetings brings video conferencing to within the CRM. This enables reps to prepare for more impactful calls and engage more effectively with prospects and customers. Here, our rep can see who is attending the meeting. You can see here that we can integrate the CRM with social media platforms. In this case, we can see what our attendees have been tweeting about and perhaps use these to help us recognise some ice-breaking topics. Once our rep is done preparing, he can join the meeting without even leaving Salesforce. When the meeting is over, Einstein analyses the recording and identifies the next steps to keep the deal moving. This prompts the rep to create a quote right from the meeting summary. In this example, the quote includes both hardware products and software subscription licenses. Often this can require businesses to prepare two separate quotes. But now, using Salesforce's Revenue Cloud, we can easily put all revenue types onto a single quote, and we can get simple, automated sales revenue reporting, which we can filter and interrogate. This means it's easier than ever for teams to work together to get quote approvals and therefore more streamlined negotiation. Now that we've created that quote, our rep's opportunity automatically progresses to the next stage in our pipeline. The sales cadence updates too, and this prompts our rep with the recommended next steps to follow in order to keep the deal moving, taking them on the fastest track to closing the deal. In this second example, we can look at how the AI within Salesforce is empowering collaboration and creating highly effective teams. In this example, our manager was planning on going for a lunchtime run before she receives a last-minute notification from her team that their forecasting meeting is being moved forward. "There's no way I can prepare in time," would have been her normal response, but she now has Salesforce Pipeline Inspection at her fingertips. With one glance, Pipeline Inspection gets her up to speed with the latest updates to all of her team's opportunities, like a change in the estimated opportunity value or the predicted close date. What would make this even more useful is if she could see which deals are likely to close this quarter. This is made a reality with our AI tool, Einstein Activity Scoring. This uses the data within our CRM to build a custom opportunity scoring model, learning from the successes of our previous sales. If we don't have enough of our own data yet, Einstein will score opportunities based upon anonymised, accurate data. The sales manager can now use Einstein opportunity scoring to decide which opportunities to invest time and resources in. This first one has progressed towards the end of the sales pipeline and predicted close date, but has a low Einstein score, so she can investigate and see what steps are recommended to help complete the deal before the quarter end. The manager can click into the recent call recording to find coaching opportunities. She doesn't have time to listen to the entire meeting recording, but that's okay because Einstein analyzes call recordings and pulls out key words. Managers can navigate to potential coaching moments within the call and leave contextual feedback, such as how her team could handle cost objections more smoothly. They can then discuss these topics at their next one-to-one meeting to help improve the rate at which they close deals. As well as analysing team performance, we can also see and interrogate the company's overall sales performance using Tableau, which is now part of the Salesforce product suite, and can show them key sales insights. So my key takeaway from this demo is that we need to provide our salespeople with the tools to allow them to collaborate as efficiently remotely as they did when they were working in offices, if not more efficiently. Just because we're reducing the opportunity to meet with customers in person doesn't mean we can lose the personal touch, and in fact, we can deliver that connected customer experience better than we ever have done. If you have any questions, I'll be joining Martin and Rory now to answer these, or you can contact me via my email address, which you can see here on this slide. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi everyone, my name is Martin Keelagher. I'm the CEO of Agile Automations, and we're here today to talk to you about automations and the future of work. So first off, a little bit about Agile Automations. We've been building RPAs and robotic workforces now since 2015. Our head office is based in the UK, over in Manchester. We work throughout a number of industries and sectors. So from financial services through to insurance, retail, manufacturing, property and legal services. So we have quite a good kind of oversight, I'd like to think, around different sectors, how they're operating and where the future of those might be. In terms of what we actually provide, as I've mentioned, we are a bespoke robotic process automations business. What does that mean? Well, we don't build on new platforms. We start with a completely fresh, clean piece of paper when we start working with a client. So we have no preconceived ideas around what we might be heading towards with them. It's completely bespoke and built to their exact requirements. We have efficiency through our smart bots, which we create for clients. We have our own managed support hosting solutions for clients as well, so that after on their own infrastructure, we can host it for them. We are built around agile development. So as you can imagine in our name, everything we do is on an agile bespoke nature, and our team are fully qualified to provide that for our clients. As I've touched upon, our key kind of services are robotic desktop automations. So that's very much where we're building a solution which will act as a supercharger to the user. So it sits on a client's desktop. They might be there going through their skills throughout that process. So obviously working through their daily tasks, as it were. And then what they might do is then open up the RDA which we create for them, which then will act as a supercharger to their skills that they're doing on their desktop. So the kind of two key elements in terms of the implementations that we provide are robotic desktop automation, which is very much acts as a supercharger to the user. So if you can imagine you have a user that's on a desktop, they might have several legacy systems which they have to interact with at any one time. And what an RDA allows them to do is have those legacy systems open in the background. They have a nice, clean, modern UI interface that they interact with. And then our bots will push and pull the data between those several systems at any one time. That works really well because you get maximum efficiencies, but you also get the strength and the robust nature of those legacy systems behind it. Obviously, the key thing we kind of offer is RPA, so robotic process automations. And they're very much a kind of a building a robotic workforce for the client. So they're there 24/7, 365. It could be working in the background. It might be a compliance, risk and governance tool. It might be going through data manipulation. It could be providing MI for senior management. And it's there to work all the time. It's there to enhance customer experience and so on and so forth. And really, that's what we're going to be focused on more today, is those kind of the automation side of it and those standalone systems. So moving more into that, what is a robotic workforce? Obviously, it's kind of a buzzword at the moment. We're hearing a lot around it. We're here today talking about it somewhat. What actually is it? Well, the way I like to explain it in some respects is, if you think about that one member of your team, that everybody says, you know, if I had 100 of you, you know, we'd do so well, we'd make an absolute fortune, it'd be brilliant. We're there to kind of make sure that you can have the opportunity to take the skill set of that individual, take what they do on a day-to-day basis, and then we can multiply that by any number of times. How do we do that? Well, we do that through automating the basic business processes that those individuals might be undertaking for a business. So it could be anything from data manipulation through to governance and risk controls, inputting of data, manipulation of it, or even analysis of that data. Anything which is kind of can be easily predicted, follows a set rule set, and large data processes. You know, we can look to automate that, which adds a number of benefits to the workforce and the business as we move through this presentation. Hopefully that'll become more clear. Some of the key aspects of it as well is obviously, you know, a bot. It's a software bot. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't take holidays. It provides the same level of quality in terms of its working ethos, you know, on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock as it does on a Friday at 4 o'clock when it wants to get out the door. You know, if we are in the workplace, as it were. And it does this 24 hours a day, 365. It just keeps working. It doesn't care what sector it's in. It just sees data and it just manipulates that data as we move through. So it's incredibly powerful and something which is going to become more and more powerful as we move forward. So how do we actually work with our clients? I think this is something that we go through quite a lot and we get asked for, is how do we kind of stand out, and how do we maybe fit into an organization where they already have a robotics team, maybe within group infrastructure. Well, the key element to ourselves is really we provide a full service proposition. So what does that look like? Well, we work with you, we go in, we ask you what your biggest headache is. We work with you on that, we scope it out. So we look at what business processes you might have that we can automate. We then look at those processes and we say, well, there's 100 there. However, you know, you might only actually, you know, you might find you can actually reduce the 100 to the 60. Of the 60, we then go, well, which of those can we automate? Well, you know, we might be able to automate 40 of the 60, or might be able to automate 50 of the 60, and the 10 that are left are the ones that might need a human sign off at the end of it. So that's where we like to think we're a lot more proactive, a lot more kind of strategic, and we like to build that long-term relationship with the client to understand what your end goal is. Obviously, in terms of this wheel, we then develop it. So we develop the solution for you. We then fully test it. We implement and train your staff on it and how to use it, whether it be an RPA or an RDA. And we then provide full maintenance support as well. So you as an organization are fully supported throughout that whole process. You don't have to worry about bringing in the skill set maybe to develop that internally. You don't have to worry with keeping up to date with the kind of latest technologies and how they are being implemented. That's something we do all for you, and we fully support you on it. And then, of course, we start again. So we're, with a lot of our clients are involved with the project management teams, the strategy of the organization. And this is just a continuing process where we're working with the client more and more live automations, more integration, and ultimately a better working environment for all, as well as the client. So that's kind of a very high level of how automations work with you as a business. Obviously, we're here today not only to talk about automations, but to talk about the kind of future of work. And I just wanted to share some of the things that we're kind of seeing with you, and kind of where I'm maybe seeing where the future of what we all kind of do on a day-to-day basis might be heading. So within this, we're going to run through the changing shape of the workforce, how we see that changing within our client sets and how we're helping them to achieve that. How sectors are adapting, so how people are kind of utilizing new technologies and moving forward with them. And then we've got kind of building the workforce of the future. So how are we seeing people take advantage of that technology, implementing it into everyday roles. So changing the face of the workforce, very much we see that the workforce will continue to adapt and change. It's becoming a case that machines, technology is becoming ever more advanced, and that of course means that people are having to adapt to that as we move forward. This of course leads to higher rates of productivity within the workforce. So we've got GDP growth, improved governance within the organisation, and obviously that will then lead to a higher margin and a much happier workforce, we all hope. In terms of the change in the skill sets required, we are seeing, and obviously here we've just got a graph there from McKinsey as well that's kind of showing this from their research, that the shape of the workforce is changing as we move forward. Everything is kind of predicting now that the kind of physical aspects of manual skills are going to reduce across sectors on the whole, all the way up to technology and IT advanced skills, which will develop and increase at a vast rate, which will continue to accelerate. I think what's really actually quite interesting here is obviously we kind of have a lot of fear around kind of bots taking our jobs and so on and so forth. But as we can see here, we can definitely see that kind of shift in terms of roles, and where perhaps kind of skills that can be automated, skills that we can see bots doing them, that will actually come through and that will happen. However, we are seeing a growth in terms of the kind of social and emotional skills, entrepreneurial activity and initiative, which I think certainly as we're kind of seeing the effects of the pandemic as well, I think that some of those skills are kind of key to us all moving forward. And I think that what we're seeing, the kind of the automation side of it, the AI, machine learning, etc., is allowing that to move forward, at pace somewhat. Which I actually think is quite exciting, and we talk a lot about kind of unlocking the potential of the workforce. And I think we can see here that there is that potential, that there might be some staff and things that haven't been recognised previously, which by taking away those mundane tasks from them, it will allow them to kind of unlock that potential and hopefully be seen and picked up from. So I think this kind of gives a quick overview of how we've seen the kind of workforce change as we move forward across a number of sectors. Going into some more detail here, so we're just talking about the kind of sectors and how businesses are adapting. So here you can see this is kind of, I've tried to pick sectors obviously based upon the kind of audience today, and so the kind of the offshore space and where we kind of see ourselves within that. So I think banking, administration, and insurance, huge kind of adapters in terms of technology, and how they're kind of now moving towards implementing that throughout a number of roles within the organizations. How we're kind of seeing repetitive tasks being removed from everybody's everyday kind of needs and job flows, which I think can only be a benefit. We're seeing how governance and risk compliance, probably one of the the most kind of highest growing of kind of sectors certainly within kind of banking, administration side of it, and insurance. It's a huge growth area, and we're seeing how automation and technology on the whole can really help stimulate that, add value to it, and enhance it as a proposition as well. The kind of example I use on that, we've had clients in the past that have used Excel documents for monitoring purposes, for example, and they've had highly experienced, highly paid risk professionals sat there, running through those with a ruler on the side of the desk, looking for exceptions to investigate. Whereas, we can build a bot that will churn through that data. It might go through thousands, if not tens of thousands of records. It will then identify key aspects of that report that the risk individual needs to look at, and it will extrapolate them into an exception report, which then means the individual only has, say, 12 to 15 targets to look at, as opposed to them trying to kind of see that one that they need to investigate. So it's a much more efficient use of time and adds an awful amount of value. We're seeing, of course, how the MI has been enhanced through integration of systems. I know Phil's kind of touching on the Salesforce side of it and how that can add a tremendous amount of value. And we're seeing that across a number of systems, that if you're in the back office and you can integrate some of these, even if it's, kind of the asset management side, where you can calculate an LTV from an overall portfolio, by having the ability to look at, the kind of cash holdings or equities, even Bitcoin. So there's all these things you can kind of look at, which is really, really exciting stuff. Obviously, when we go into kind of the energy and mining sectors, I think if we look at the kind of mining, as it were, I think if you look at how bots, AI, and other things are kind of being used to predict stores and extrapolation rates, etc., within that sector, I find that's really exciting. All the way down to how it's even integrating with the homes. So even within your own homes now, where you can have an intelligent devices which will monitor the usage of your property, all the way to fitting solar panels, which will then release that stored energy when it can see peaking demands, and it can predict where those peaks of demands are. So there's an awful amount of things going on in that, which is quite exciting as well. Healthcare, major one at the moment. Obviously, we've seen the pandemic come in. I think probably we've all been kind of blown away by the amount of data analysis that's gone in that, when they look to predict, rates of COVID, etc. How we've seen systems integrations across Europe and further afield, how they've been sharing that data, working together to make much more intelligent decisions, and how they can predict the demand for the vaccinations. Obviously, pointing to one side, the political side of that, which we've seen recently. But I think it's quite powerful to see how that's, really kind of changing. And also, I think what's quite interesting is the way that healthcare is actually predicted to increase. So because we're actually finding ways where we can save resource in terms of administration and other areas, it's meaning that we can then bring in more manual workers to help support some of that. Maybe that's nursing, maybe it's within mental health, all these things which I think we need more and more people to help with, and be that much more, as we've said about, emotional intelligence. The fact that we can save costs in other areas is allowing us to then invest into those kind of frontline services, which I think is another thing that's just really powerful. Retail, obviously retail massively moved towards an online basis, driven a lot by the kind of lockdowns, as we've all seen. I'm sure we've all been guilty of ordering one or two things off Amazon, with everything that's been going on, and their famous boxes being delivered. But it doesn't mean that the kind of high street doesn't have a future. They are very much there. They are very much looking at how technology can be implemented within their stores, how they can be much more intelligent in terms of how they interact with us. This goes all the way from face recognition tools, where it can actually trace your buying habits within a store, all the way through to kind of an Amazon Go environment that we've seen recently, where you actually walk around the store and you're actually purchasing it as you walk through, which is going to be massively powerful. And I think retail as well, seen a huge change in terms of how parcels are tracked, how we now expect to be able to see things in real time and track that information to the absolute minute, so that we might be all sat at home waiting till 20:09 because we know the parcel's due at 18 minutes past 9. And we're kind of then seeing that kind of roll out within all different sectors above. So, I think that's impacting on, certainly on kind of the banking, energy, healthcare. It's kind of, we all expect that kind of instant, instant information now. Banking especially, I think, has been transformed in terms of that. Now you can go on an app now and see your asset allocations, control them, invest. Amazing changes there. So quite powerful stuff, I think, in terms of how businesses are adapting. Here we're going to just run through the kind of workforce of the future as we're kind of seeing it. So very much a case of kind of, harnessing technologies. Obviously technology changes every 6 months as a step forward. And we're kind of seeing the key to that is that organizations have got to keep ahead of that curve. They have to keep adapting. It's not a case of just adapting one form of technology and then sitting on it. You have to continually make sure you're moving forward. If nothing else, so that you're ahead of your competitors and competitive, on a national stage, international stage, that we all now need to be. Change will require redesign. It's something that we mentioned before, where in terms of Agile Automations, how we work with our clients. So when we go in there, we look at the processes, we look at, we don't just go in with a sledgehammer effect and just automate the 100 processes. we very much look at those processes and how they can be better designed for the needs and wants of the organisation. Which is very much kind of a case then that if they can do that, they can automate as many of those processes as possible. They can then look to unlock the potential of the workforce. I think one of the biggest impact we're probably going to see as we move forward, certainly on the back of the pandemic, is very much the kind of work-life balance. I think we've all spoken about the importance of a work-life balance for an awful number of years. I think a lot of people may have accused technology of actually taking away from that in some instances. Certainly, I remember the days of the kind of BlackBerry addiction and other things. I know I was accused of it, and I think people have always been maybe had that in their mind around technology implemented on their lives, but very much now we're seeing how it's actually an enabler to, if done correctly, you can work anywhere in the world, any location with a good internet connection, secure and safe environment. So I think that's going to have huge implementations as we move forward. Just because I think that a lot of people will see that, and a lot of organisations are already changing the way that they work. We've seen that with Nationwide now, where their recent news where they've now tasked with their workforce that they can work from anywhere. And I think a lot of people will be watching that to see how that impacts the benefits and perhaps even maybe negatives around that. So that's going to be really quite powerful. And that again leads into kind of embracing technology, the importance of doing that, the importance of making sure that your staff are able to do it. So if they've got the right equipment, are you looking at AI? Are you looking at automation? How can you automate things, work more intelligently? All these are the kind of things that I think organisations, will be bringing in as we move forward into the future. I think we have to be realistic. I think we know that some jobs will be lost. In terms of FTE. Whether I think it's interesting, I've just included here some stats from McKinsey again, just kind of showing that I think it's interesting to look at that. Although everybody is now accepting the fact that jobs will be lost, only 6% actually see an overall reduction in the number of headcount across the organisations, and I think that very much leads into the fact that organisations will adapt, people will adapt. Again, there's that opportunity, and I do see it as a key opportunity that people can retrain. So perhaps people that have been in the wrong roles, they can then look at this, they can retrain and move into other roles, whether it be an IT support, a technology role. These are areas where we're going to see a huge amount of growth, and especially if it's someone who has that emotional technology intelligence. I really do think that there's some key opportunities there for people. We're kind of seeing, as I've touched upon with the Nationwide side, there is an acceleration in trends towards remote working, e-commerce, all these kind of automation tools that we're seeing at the moment. And I think that's really kind of unlocking people's ability to move across and examine new jobs and new futures and opportunities as they move forward. So on the whole, I think it's really kind of exciting. I think we're kind of, when we work with people, we're just kind of saying, don't get left behind, continue to move forward, have programs in place to retrain staff if that's something that you have the appetite to do, and keep that staff retention up. So in summary, I think some of the key benefits of automation, robotic process automations, are very much in the kind of control elements. So, complete audit trail, the ability to go into your organization in detail, in depth, either through an ad hoc report or an automated report or anything you like. You can design it to do what you want it to do. And I think that's something which is going to be quite powerful. If you sat in a C-suite meeting and you want to know how many new accounts you've opened that day, you can drag it up on your app. You can have a look at what jurisdictions are in, the kind of the amounts, the cash, deposits might be coming in. All these things that you can kind of come in, and it just helps you to make much more informed decisions, as a board, as a team, and I think that's really quite powerful. The kind of efficiency drives that we're seeing with bots, with automations. So, when we build a robotic process automations for our client, they're going to see reduced, if not no errors from those bots at all. They do exactly what their coding tells them to do. And that obviously is a huge benefit, that you're not getting any of those human errors. it leads to increased customer service, enhanced client and staff wellbeing. And again, it leads to improved decision making, as we've seen with the sales proposition from Salesforce. You have to have that high quality data in there in order to make those informed decisions. And this is all part of that. Having a nice, clean and integrated system. And I think the key thing for me, and I do always talk about this, is, to me, the biggest opportunity, with RPA, with bots, with what we do, is very much unlocking the potential of the workforce. We are there to take away all of those pains, those trials and tribulations, within your roles that you don't want to do. We want to take that away. So it then allows you to then concentrate on what you're good at. Allows you more time to pick up the phone, to talk to a client, have that strategic conversation. How can we help you? Is there things we could do better? All those things that we are giving you back time, to do that, to add that value. And I think that's probably, if there's one thing I would say from this presentation, that is the biggest thing I think that technology, and automations and the future of work will do, is hopefully giving us all back that time that we all crave. So that's a very quick kind of overview and summary. In terms of contacting ourselves, we'd love to talk to you. There's lots of resources on the website. We have white papers on there which compare and contrast different types of automation, different providers, different methodologies. Always happy to chat. All my contact details are on there. And this is it's been a fantastic opportunity, and I'll now pass back to Rory.
Thank you very much, Martin. That's brilliant. And this is a particular interest of mine. I was kind of using automation to a very limited extent many years ago, starting with even the simple form and getting that to, with staff illness, getting them to submit that way, collating it in the beginning of the day rather than trying to get loads of phone calls left and right, tying up the administration staff in the morning. So lots of stuff there to digest, and we've got a few questions that we're going to come through. And I think the starter one is, we talk about, we've heard RPA there, we've heard automation, and the buzzword seems to be AI and machine learning and stuff like that. It can seem quite a daunting thing for people to start off with. So for a smaller business, and I think I'll go with you, Phil, first with this, because you were looking at that Honeywell example, it looked quite daunting. So how would a smaller business go about starting this kind of journey?
Thanks, Rory. One of the beauties of the software as a service model is that the same functions are available whether you have 10,000, 100, or even 10 user licenses. But I accept that bigger businesses can achieve better economies of scale when it comes to implementing the technology. So if a smaller business doesn't have the budget to implement an all-singing and all-dancing system, then there are simple sort of CRM and data tasks that they could consider to make their sales process more efficient. So we encounter many businesses locally that are completely reliant upon the strengths of their salespeople or business development people for success in sales, and they don't have a set and efficient way of selling that everybody follows. So at the very least, businesses can put in place a defined pipeline that everybody follows, and then you can begin to automate elements of that pipeline, such as things like KYC checks or proposal creation. And of course, then you can integrate with other systems, such as Martin touched upon, to remove repetitive tasks.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. And we were talking there, and Martin, you were talking there, kind of more thought leadership than the practical. So questions come in for you saying, in the Jersey financial sector, what are you seeing the most demand from banks, investment companies, trusts, family offices, or other? Where is the demand at the moment that you're seeing, potentially even more specifically in the financial sector?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think financial services is probably one of the biggest adapters at the minute. But a lot of that as well is that they've probably, they have got the problems that they need to look at to automate to become more efficient as well. So it's kind of a good, kind of facilitator for them in that governance and risk demands are growing. We're all seeing that. obviously to get the skill set those individuals in is quite difficult, and that's where automations and bots offer quite a interesting opportunity, that if they can automate a lot of those processes, then they obviously get a lot more kind of capacity in those areas. But one of the things that I'm always trying to push is, automations. It isn't just for the kind of the big players out there. Small businesses can benefit from it too. So we do work with clients, of numerous size. We've got clients that are, 15 to 20 user companies, all the way up to, 75 to 100,000 users. Some of the smaller ones, for example, where we've worked with asset management companies, which might have a property portfolio where they might have several thousand rent payments coming in, for example, and we've created a product which is a bank reconciliation tool, which can then go through and allocate those payments to the individual accounts, which will then link through to the CRM. So there's a number of other opportunities. I mean, I would just say, obviously, don't feel like this is something that is purely there for the big boys. Anyone can kind of benefit from it. Even basic processes within your company, we can see Microsoft's pushing more and more, basic automations that you can actually create yourself as well. So there's a huge opportunity there for everybody. As I say, it's probably just keeping ahead of that curve, really, and making sure you are adopting these things sooner rather than later.
And indeed, I've actually been having a little play with Power BI myself, just to see what's capable of doing so. But you not to kind of detract away from those smaller entities that can take advantage of RPA. We've got a question. I don't think anyone wants to let government off the hook here. So I know we've talked about that, Martin. Are you seeing government's use of RPA growing as well?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, in the UK, we do have public sector clients, government related. They are looking at RPA. They are looking at how they can work more efficiently. I think that as we move forward, there's going to be an awful, number of spotlights perhaps on government processes and how they do operate. Obviously, with cost saving initiatives and things that are going to come through. So they are slowly adapting these processes. I can't tell you too much because there's NDAs, etc., that are signed. But in terms of some of the processes we're working with at the moment, it tends to be things like internal ordering processes, payment processes, things of that nature. There's a lot of data manipulation and things that are looking at as well, because they do hold an awful amount of data, as you can imagine. It's not always necessarily used to its maximum, whereas that's where you can have robotics sit over that, which can give them a much more insightful viewpoint for MI purposes and other reasons. So I think slowly they're kind of getting there. I think, if I was honest, one of the biggest problems that you have in the public sector is obviously that, we get accused sometimes, I guess, when we're automating processes, that you can be, kingdom destroying and things like that. And, we have to be very much aware of that and work with the clients to educate them around the fact that we're not necessarily replacing jobs with robots, but we're allowing them to, be retrained and go into other areas within the organization where there might be more of those kind of intelligent skill sets and entrepreneurial activities they can get involved with. So we try and do it that way as well, to try and break down those barriers within the organizations.
Brilliant. And I know behind the scenes it's something that's happening at a local level as well. Phil, going through your presentation, and I'm intrigued as well by the Tableau stuff, seeing that kind of visualization of the data to making it easier to spot things. But again, you might have smaller businesses, even the big boys really. They might say, well, do I have to buy a product to have it? Do I already have the data? What kind of things are you drawing upon that those businesses might already have and would be an easy first step?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of businesses that we're working with, one of the tasks is either looking at what data already exists within the CRM and looking at ways we can manipulate that, or extracting data from another system. So locally, but also our financial services businesses use systems like Navision or Viewpoint. One of the things we can do is use robotics, for instance, find a way of extracting data from there and analysing it against sales data as well, so that we have a picture of the customer, picture of a prospect before they become a customer, and then a view of the customer once they have been converted and become a customer as well. So we can sort of look at the amount of resource we're putting into actually winning business versus resource we're putting into maintaining business, and Yeah, there are loads of things we can do, but that's one example that sort of springs to mind of ways that we can extract data from other systems and utilize what a business already has without having to go to too much more effort.
Excellent, and I'm going to throw this one up in the air, so whoever wants to take this one can. You know, one of the anecdotes that always sticks with me when I talk about analysis, particularly and the automation of analysis, is the kind of YouTube model from a long time ago when they brought the app to iOS, and the development team were all right-handed, and they didn't factor that into the building of the iOS, and they couldn't work out why all these videos were upside down when moving to landscape and people's hands were in different directions. So taking the bias out of analysis, have there been any anecdotal or any key events that you've seen where the automation has found out information that the business really had no idea about and has either monetized or changed the way they work? It's a big question.
That's a big question, Rory. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll have to jump in on that. I mean, I think some of the ones where we've seen something similar, which I can't go into huge detail on, but I think when we've created governance and risk aspects for clients, obviously you're limited by a lot of the time by just the fact that you've got a human that's maybe scanning through documents and looking for an exception, or it could be that a sanctioned country might have come to new accounts and said, can we open an XYZ account? And sometimes that doesn't always get picked up on because the individuals opening the accounts, for instance, might have had 10 hours of CPD or something of that effect, whereas bots obviously will just pick that up because it's on a list which is governed by governance and risk in the background. So they create that risk, and then the bots will check that as often as you program it to do that. So obviously when you put that bot on the system and it's streaming through tens of thousands of data, it is quite surprising sometimes, or somewhat interesting, which things can be identified in the background and brought through into the exception reports. So hopefully that'll give you some idea without me going into masses of detail for obvious reasons.
I've got one quite simple anecdote as well, which for a lot of businesses, when we're putting in CRM technology, we set up trip reports. So this is where we can describe the business trips that people are taking, and this can include things like the cost of their flights, accommodation, and attending expos when they go overseas. And they start to tag the opportunities that are created from these trips. So then we can start to calculate the ROI of all their business development activities, and actually querying the success of those opportunities with businesses versus what they perceive the success to be is really, really interesting. And there's one that springs to mind, which is that there was a business who were investing quite a lot in going out to various different regions of the Middle East and going to, I think they're going to things like STEP conferences every year or so. I have a feeling because they maybe won a significant piece of business by doing so historically, and probably because they quite enjoyed going to the event. But actually, once you see the data in the cold light of day, you say, well, actually, you're meeting a lot of opportunities, but those are not actually converting. And actually, the more frequent trips you have to London or even to Guernsey or wherever else you're going, those are the ones that are proving successful, or but at least you're able to make that data-backed decision, so they can actually start to look at the data and say, you know what, we invest this money in going to these conferences. How much are we actually making? And that's a very simple example of how, by looking at historic data and actually analysing it in the correct format, we're able to change the way that a business actually behaves.
I think you just worried a lot of people there about they're like going away on their trips, especially with the flights just about to return. There's but that's the interesting part, isn't it? That we now have new data about what happens when people haven't travelled away, and compared to what it was. So if you did dig back a little further, that those success criteria that you're talking about and that kind of ratio spend to reward was hard to define before the pandemic, and now actually there are data points now that you can look backwards and forwards from that. But looking at that data and analyzing it automatically, like you're saying, for me, that's the first part. It's not the sexy part. People, loads of online webinars and stuff talking about that AI stuff and everything like that. And I do believe we're going to get there at some point. But how important, or how long is that journey to go from gathering the data, just looking at the automation, to then have the ability for machine learning and AI to take over? Or is it already here and I'm a bit naive and it's not actually as discrete as it once was? So Phil, I'm going to throw that at you, because I think you're the first steps of that journey. Where would you say the next steps after you've got your data in there and starting to analyze it are?
Sure, and I also agree with your point as well, that sort of doing the simple bits first is often where we start with these things. I think a lot of this, the automations are available now. What we tend to find with a lot of businesses is that they can't necessarily adopt all these things at once, and so getting process correct first is usually where we start with these things. So putting in processes that everybody in the organization is going to follow, and then you can start to automate little things at a time, is the way that we normally go. In my previous answer, I mentioned doing things like KYC checks or proposal creations. Those are really, really easy things that once you get a pipeline in place. And an example of that in action is how we find a lot of financial services businesses go down their sales process, and once they're ready to onboard a client, they then hand opportunities to their compliance team, who will tell them whether or not they can go ahead with actually onboarding a client. That's, for me, as I find that quite a daft way about doing things, because you're investing a lot of resources into potentially winning business with somebody that you're never going to end up working with. So by using automations, automating things like the KYC process, you can put in technology into CRM so that as soon as somebody's name goes into your system for the first time, it's currently running checks, constantly running checks every 24 hours about whether this person's politically exposed or whether there's any negative PR about them or whatever it might be, so that you can decide immediately, oh, we're going to invest resources into try and win business with these people. So there's little things like that, which that's not complicated, but it brings forward a cumbersome process to the very, very beginning of our sales process, and hopefully saves businesses a lot of time and money. So yeah, I think that's probably my best example.
Yeah, and as you were speaking there, someone's added that there. I'll say the polite version of this kind of saying, garbage in, garbage out. Somebody's saying there a lot of the benefits is dependent on the quality of the data. How do businesses assess the quality of the data in their core systems? If you're building these decisions on data that is inherently flawed or collected incorrectly, is there any way of checking that?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the skill in which something is implemented. So working with the project teams to ensure that the necessary fields that need to be mandatory are, so that people are putting in quality data and they can't progress unless they do enter that data. And then removing elements of flexibility, so creating more sort of drop-down lists or pick fields and things that people have to be very consistent with their data, so that we don't have people within an organization describing the same thing in different ways. So that makes the data higher quality as well. But like everything, it's down to regular review and challenging it, and actually using things like robotics to analyze the data. So let's compare it to other data sets and see the quality of our data. So regular review is essential, and hopefully the time spent doing regular review of our data is far less than the time that we've saved from implementing it in the first place.
Brilliant. And Martin, I'm going to possibly touch on a question that's come through, but I actually want to sandwich in one of my own first. So I'll come back if I don't really feel I've answered the question from the attendee here. you talked about time saving, and it's a big one. And Jess and I recently talked about it in another event, about, how do you find the time to train people up for these processes, do that. And I said, it's kind of like a chicken egg scenario. The automation will give a company time back to reinvest, in my opinion, back into the employees. It's not always about, hiring and firing, and automation taking people's job. It's about moving mundane tasks to free up your employees to do higher level things and more, more to the benefit of each of the companies. So, on that note, the kind of question that I'm talking about is giving time back to employees and finding that gold personally within the administration sector. So somebody's asked, how do you assess the cost savings? Because if I'm buying different products over the place, licensing, maintenance, how can I keep an eye on whether or not I'm getting value for money out of this automation? But is it as simple as that? Because you may actually be changing the way in which your workforce happens. Again, a big question. It's given you a lot.
Yeah. I mean, the quick answer is use us, because we do that for you.
Excellent.
Yeah, but no, seriously. I mean, obviously for us, we've got to show that to our clients. Otherwise, we won't get clients, because obviously we have to show what the ROI is for that investment, for everything you've just spoken about. If we can't show how automating several systems brings value to a business, then we really shouldn't be doing what we're doing. So obviously part of that is working with the client. You have to join the scoping project. You go in, you calculate the FTE spent on any one business task. You calculate the cost benefits to the business of that. You then look at reputational risk if it's a governance and risk system. So obviously you can then factor that in, that if there was a breach there, what would that be in terms of regulatory fines and so on and so forth. You then look at how you can add capacity to the business. So what's that kind of opportunity cost? We spoke about, AI versus automation. Very much kind of one of the key differences there is the intelligent, emotional side of it. So obviously, if we can free up and automate the processes that kind of take away people from that frontline office role of actually talking to people on a phone, then there's a huge value add there that you can pick up the phone, talk to client, and understand their needs and wants. So all these things kind of come together, and we obviously assign a cost to those, both on a time basis and obviously as I say, the kind of the opportunity cost or the regulatory cost of it. We then obviously can then assess that versus the cost of the project, and then we can then start calculating that ROI for the client and how it's added value. But ultimately, I think with automation, when you're working with the client, and as we all start working, with automations, we can see the benefits pretty much from day one when you're implementing it. Obviously, you've got to get your training right. You've got to get staff trained on it. But as long as you've got a really nice, clean UI that's indicative, it's kind of user friendly and you can easily jump into it, that adds an awful amount of value. And then just jumping back onto Phil's question, not to give him, but in terms of data cleansing, that's something we do an awful lot of as well. So if you have we've got clients that have got literally millions of streams of data. We actually do have bots that will go through that and cleanse that data. So that's something we do with a lot of clients before they actually maybe look to integrate that onto a Salesforce platform. We can go through and cleanse a lot of that data. So an example of that is, if it's lines on the database, line 1 might be the first line of the address, line 2 might be the second, that's got a postcode field. You tend to find sometimes a postcode might be in line 1, for example. The bot will go through, it will then put the postcode into the right field. And if there's an error in the postcode, it can also check that against external sources as well. So it can then auto correct it. So you start building in that, that kind of, intelligent function. I don't want to say AI because it's not AI, but it's an intelligent correction, shall we say. So yeah, they're the kind of things that we do as well.
Absolutely.
Can I just come in on that as well? When we do implement Salesforce into businesses, the cleansing of data to prepare it to get into Salesforce is usually the most common element of the project that delays a project, and businesses tend to anticipate that they can set junior staff a deadline and say, "Oh, alongside your day job, can you also tidy up this data ready for upload?" And it very, very seldom happens on time. So using technology Martin's just talked about is by far and away the easiest way to get things done quickly and more accurately. So I'd completely endorse what Martin's just said as well.
Yeah, and it's not always just that dollar amount. Are you saying there, by doing what you're saying with this intelligent cleansing, it's risk and reputation as well. You're much more reliable with your data, and sometimes that's hard to quantify. About the things that don't go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Phil,
just on that, Roy, I mean, we've got clients where we're saving them several million a year, but that's based purely on FTE, which is amazing. And we look at that and you get a really warm, fluffy feeling inside, and everyone claps each other and that's fantastic. But the reality is that if you can mitigate against just one claim from a regulatory body, that could be hundreds of millions. And that's a really important thing with automation is it does not make mistakes. If it finds something it doesn't like, it throws it out as an exception report, and then head of risk, they can look at that and go, we make a decision based on our expertise. That's, I think, one of the powerful things about it is I think people can get to, they look at the FTE savings and all those things, and actually these much bigger elements that can save you an awful lot of money in terms of reputational risk and fines as you move forward. So just something I'm always kind of trying to throw out there to people.
No, you're with me on that. And as time is approaching, I've got a question for each of you here, kind of to finalize this. Phil, I'll come to you first. We've lived in a world now over the last year where lots of new things have been thrown at people, especially the workers, on the front line of things. People might be scared that this is just another system to input data into on top of other things and other changes that have happened this year. What kind of integrations do you already have that means this isn't the case? It's not about typing a new thing in from a new box from column A to column B. How much do you actually integrate with current systems?
A lot. So Salesforce has an open API as well, and that means that we can integrate with existing business systems. I've already touched upon the fact that a lot of our financial services clients use Navision or Viewpoint. We've integrated with the likes of those before. A lot of law firms use practice management systems, and again, you can integrate your CRM with those. And the benefit of doing so is that you haven't got somebody sitting there entering data into a CRM and then again into that second system. They're entering it into one system and it flows from one to the other. But the possibilities of integrating with the existing systems is almost infinite. And Salesforce has its own app exchange as well, which a lot of common products that we use in business, like things like Xero or Sage as well, or marketing systems like things like MailChimp, that those things can integrate with our CRM as well. And it just means that our data is starting to exist in one place rather than in a set of disparate systems.
Brilliant. I think you've named enough there. I think you'd be hard pushed to find a company that doesn't use one of those names that you've said there. So it just shows that starting point is really easy. And Martin, I'm probably being unkind to you during this session because I'm asking you all the really floaty out there questions, but I'm going to end on one that's kind of, again, something that I hold dear to my heart. And it's who's best placed to find the kind of automated processes and that gold within the company that already exists there, because we always talk about top down and, you should have someone on the board, a CTO, CIO, that kind of thing. But I actually believe that, the people, the chalk faces, I would say, as an old teacher, the people doing those jobs every day, those mundane ones over and over, I believe that that's where you should be interviewing and talking to the people on the floor to say exactly, what is it that winds you up every day that you think could be automated? But what's your opinion? And have you seen any of that? Is it always top down or is it bottom up?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly our approach that you've just gone through. I mean, for us, you have to get top-down buy-in. You have to get sponsor. So that's where you have to have somebody who's asking the questions, who wants the reports, who wants to know how the project's progressing. So you need that buy-in at the top, and then to some degree even a financial buy-in that someone's answerable for that budget that's going towards it. That will obviously drive the project forward and get it on the board's radar, which is really important. In terms of where the expertise comes from, we do exactly what you just said. We sit down with the people that are there every day using the systems. We're there to make their lives easier. So one of our things is kind of reassuring them in a way that, we're not there. We're not looking at how we can replace you with a bot. We're looking at what you do on a day-to-day basis. So, why are you using that Excel document? Why have you got 10 systems open on your desktop that you're having to log into every time someone rings you up if you're in a telephony team? we're saying, look, we can make your life easy. We can make a nice, clean UI interface, which is pushing and pulling data between the 10 of them. But the only real way I think sometimes to see that is, as you say, it's sitting down at the kind of coal face, as you'd say, and kind of looking at what are people using on a day-to-day basis. And we found even by doing that sometimes it's a surprise to people actually, what is being used. And you tend to find as well that a lot of people have actually found ways around how systems don't work. They've kind of found ways that it's not very efficient. They're like sat there and they've obviously, they've created a solution themselves because it's so frustrating to them. So that's something else that we can kind of work with them on, and that's where we get the subject matter experts as well. So we obviously do that kind of sit down, look at the processes they're doing. And again, it goes back to the ROI side of it as well, where we calculate how much time they're spending on those individual projects. And then we'll do workshops. So we'll go through that, get the teams together, what's your biggest headache? Right, that's something we can remove. That's something we can build a custom bespoke API for to link those systems. We can put a bot on that. They're the kind of conversations that we have, and it's all around trying to work, kind of improve that environment, trying to minimize staff turnover, because nobody wants to be sat there, looking at, the data side and manipulating all that stuff. So we want to try and improve that working environment. So I completely concur with you that it is very much about getting the buy-in at the top, getting someone who's kind of there as a sponsor to the project, whether that be a CTO or other. At the moment, we work with kind of CTO, a COO, customer delivery managers, and so on and so forth. So all of that kind of buy-in, pushing the project forward, and then obviously it is working and understanding what the biggest headaches are within the business that people are finding and how we can remove those for the benefit of all as we move forward.
Brilliant. And thanks, guys, because I'm aware of my own conscious bias. I could go on and on about this topic. Before the pandemic, I kept banging on about cloud usage and stuff like that. And, people finally, kind of semi-patting themselves on the back because they finally joined a train that left long ago. And I feel very much the same with automation. Talk about the big ideas, but it starts with this. It starts with taking what you have, start making some proper decisions. We always talk about data-driven decision making, and do people really do it, or like you said, do they just sit there with an Excel sheet just looking along the lines? So great to hear from you guys, and we'll be sending this recording on, and there'll be follow-up for everybody that attended. So thanks very much, guys, and we'll pass on those details. It's been great speaking to you, and let this continue. Bye now.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rory. Thanks, Martin.